A 13th century monk made a choice that cost him his life, and left behind 310 pages of secrets that still terrify scholars today. In 1204, a Benedictine monastery in Bohemia faced a decision. They needed a scribe, someone willing to copy an entire biblical encyclopedia by hand. It would take years. It would demand absolute precision. One monk stepped forward. What he didn't know was that this choice would make him famous for something far darker than devotion. The monk's name is lost to history, but his manuscript, the Codex Gigas, or giant book, survived. At 36 inches tall and weighing 165 pounds, it's one of the largest medieval manuscripts ever created. Yet its size isn't what made it infamous. On page 290, there's an image that changed how the world saw this book forever. A full-page portrait of the devil stares back at you. Not a sketch, not a margin note. A deliberate towering image, rendered in red and black ink, with hollow eyes and a twisted mouth. Below it, a smaller image shows a demon fortress. The pages around it contain explicit instructions on summoning spirits and binding demons. This isn't a Bible anymore. It's a grimoire. By the 1600s, legend had crystallized around this book. Scholars whispered that the monk made a pact, 13 years of work, compressed into one night, aided by Satan himself. The bargain was simple: immortal fame in exchange for his soul. The church couldn't ignore such a claim. They investigated, and they had to decide, was this heresy or just a very strange book? What investigators actually found was more prosaic and more interesting. Handwriting analysis revealed the book was written by one person over many years, not one supernatural night. The monk didn't summon demons, he copied them. The grimoire sections weren't his innovation. They were transcriptions of existing texts on demonology and medicine that circulated in medieval libraries. But here's where the real mystery begins. Around 1229, roughly halfway through the project, the handwriting changes sharply. The script becomes more hurried, less precise. The spacing tightens. Whatever happened, the monk made a decision: push harder, finish faster. We don't know why. Illness, pressure from his abbot. The gap between what we see and what we'll ever know is the entire weight of this artifact. The book's contents reveal a medieval mind grappling with control. There's scripture, yes, but also medical remedies, astronomical tables, a calendar of saints, and extensive demonological material. The monk wasn't trying to summon evil. He was cataloging it, mapping it, trying to understand the unseen forces his contemporaries believed surrounded them every day. The Devil's Bible label stuck anyway. By the 1600, Rudolph Roman II, Holy Roman Emperor, purchased the Codex for his Prague castle. He paid a fortune not for the scripture, but for the occult sections. He believed the book held real power. He was wrong, but his decision to acquire it ensured the manuscript's survival through centuries of war and cultural upheaval. March 1943. World War Roman II was grinding through its fourth year. The Nazis occupied Prague. They viewed medieval manuscripts as cultural treasures, German treasures. The Codex was seized and relocated to a castle in Moravia. The monastery where it was born centuries earlier watched it disappear. No one knew if it would ever return. 6 months later, as Soviet forces advanced westward, the Nazis faced a choice: destroy the manuscript to prevent its capture or evacuate it. They evacuated. The Codex was moved again, this time to a monastery in Bohemia, hidden from both armies. The monk who created it 750 years earlier couldn't have imagined his work would become a prize of war. May 1945. The war ended. The Codex was discovered by Soviet forces and taken to Moscow as a war prize. For 2 decades, it vanished from public view. Western scholars didn't know if it still existed. The gap between certainty and ignorance was absolute. Then, in 1968, a decision was made at the highest levels of Soviet authority. The manuscript would be returned, not to Germany, not to the Catholic Church, to Sweden, which had served as a neutral ground during the Cold War. The Swedish National Library in Stockholm became its new home. For the first time in decades, scholars could study it openly. The Devil's Bible was no longer hidden. What they discovered was both mundane and extraordinary. The demonic imagery wasn't unique. It appeared in other medieval manuscripts. The grimoire sections were standard for the era, but the sheer scale, 310 pages, 165 pounds, made this book a complete medieval encyclopedia of the sacred and profane, all copied by one person's hand over decades. Modern analysis has revealed something the legend always missed. The monk who created this book wasn't a heretic or a Satanist. He was a scholar operating within the intellectual bounds of his time. Demonology was legitimate study. Understanding evil was considered a path to understanding God. He made a choice: document everything. Control the chaos through knowledge. The real secret hidden in the Codex Gigas isn't supernatural. It's historical. It's a window into a mind 800 years dead, trying to make sense of a world he experienced as fragmented and threatening. Every demon illustrated, every remedy documented, every saint catalogued. They are all evidence of one person's decision to impose order on chaos through sheer force of labor. Today, the Codex Gigas sits behind climate-controlled glass in Stockholm, digitized, analyzed, stripped of its supernatural mystique. Yet the legend persists. People still speak of the Devil's Bible as if it's cursed, as if turning its pages might summon something dark. They are wrong. What's dark is time itself. The fact that we'll never know the monk's name, never hear his voice, never understand the full weight of what drove him to spend his life on this singular task. The Codex Gigas endured because someone somewhere always chose to protect it. The monk chose to create it. The monastery chose to preserve it. Rudolf Roman II chose to collect it. The Nazis chose not to destroy it. The Soviets chose to return it. Each decision, made under pressure with incomplete information, conspired to keep this artifact alive. That's the real story the Devil's Bible tells, not about demons, but about human choice under uncertainty. Subscribe to explore more lost artifacts and the decisions that preserved them. Each one a thread through history waiting to be pulled.